I can't add any more. Let's welcome the next State Member for the Northern Tablelands, Debra O'Brien.
I'm completely overwhelmed. And I'm short, okay. Just absolutely welcome everybody here tonight. I'm completely overwhelmed by your support completely. Before I start, I just want to thank Hazel so much for reminding us that we're standing on Aboriginal land. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you, Hazel. And Thelma, isn't she just gorgeous? Thelma is not only just a wonderful, compassionate, intelligent, warm human being, she's a reminder that it can be done up here, that it doesn't have to be a bunch of national people walking around ruling the joint. It doesn't have to be like that. Thelma's a reminder. You see her and think, it can be done. We can do it. So thank you, Thelma, for that. And Doug. A pin-up boy for all the lefties, no doubt about it.
The right do like it.
So thank you very much for Doug for that. I really, really appreciate your support. And also, I mean, thank you very much for all the Labor team so far. We've been absolutely the most hard-working group we could imagine. We have door knocking, doing all kinds of things that may not have been done here for quite a while. And we're talking to people everywhere, and it's been fantastic talking to people everywhere, because when you do, you get out of your little enclave amongst the people that kind of agree with you, and you start talking to people from very different parts of life, very different walks of life, and you start to learn that people have very different problems, and you've got to get away from what you know. Because if you're going to represent everybody and not just your friends, you really do have to talk to everybody, and that's what we've been doing. And we've been having an amazing time doing it, so fantastic. My mouth's so dry. I've got to get me some water. And also, I've got to give a big shout out to my family here who've come down from Queensland today. And they, of course, feeling very victorious. And my brother-in-law over here, Martin, with the beer and the blue shirt and the black. He actually door knocked all over Campbell Newman's seat. Now, and I've got to tell you, he doesn't live in Campbell Newman's seat. He lives 120 kilometres from Campbell Newman's seat. That's a long way to go door knocking. That's how strongly he felt about Campbell Newman. So thank you. And he's been helping me too, so he's a great help. I'll just have a drink. He's been a fantastic support. In fact, he took me down to the Inverell. By the way, are there any farmers here tonight? Oh, fantastic. Thank you. We took me down to the Inverell Farmers Association Q&A the other night, and of course that was a very, very challenging night. I'm a great supporter of the farmers, but of course I'm not a farmer, and I was sitting on a panel with a lot of experts. So that was a very, very, very difficult night, so and I really thank Martin for being there for me. Okay, this is a much easier night. These are my friends, hopefully. Okay. So part of when you're travelling around talking to people, you discover, or you know again, as if I need to be convinced again, that politics is intricately interwoven into every aspect of our lives. People say, I'm not interested in politics. Well, too bad, politics is very interested in you. So that's what I learned again by going around talking to people. And there are hundreds of incidences of how policies have changed people's lives dramatically. Now, we just go back to Gough. Just Gough. For a moment there, and Gough. I know. We love you, Gough. I'm not even religious, okay. When Gough introduced, for example, the single parent pension, okay, you think politics has nothing to do with you. When he introduced the single parent pension, a whole generation of women did not have to cruelly surrender their babies. They didn't have to stay in abusive relationships. And when he paved the way for equal pay for women, which women had been fighting for, by the way, for generations and hundreds of years, okay, when he paved the way for that, that economic freedom gave women the social independence that they'd longed for so long. Okay, so you can't be free. You can't be free without economic independence. You cannot be free without economic independence. So those policies paved the way for people's lives to change completely. Again, people say that freedom is a state of mind. It's not a state of mind, it's a state of good policy. It's a state of laws that support you. It's very difficult for a woman, for example, in that time, before that time, sort of to demand respect when they had to beg for their housekeeping money. It's a very, very different story altogether to defend yourself when you don't have domestic violence laws to support you. All of those things made a huge, big difference to women, and it paved the way for example, me being able to be here today. And for the most historic moment is the Queensland Ministry. For the first time in Australian history, we have a government which is more than half women. So, go girls! Go girls! Now, this was a policy, and I suppose I'm dividing these policies up a little bit tonight, but this was a policy of liberation, a policy that defended, protected and supported the most vulnerable. It was a policy that allowed for liberation to happen. There are all kinds of policies. There are also policies of destruction. And there's plenty of that going around. I just came back from Moree for the celebration of the Freedom Bus Ride. And it was probably one of the most amazing weekends of my life. I was born in Moree. So I ran into a lot of my old school friends who, when we were little, they couldn't actually go to the swimming pool. A quarter of the town were not allowed to go to the swimming pool. Now in Moree, the swimming pool is the centre of our social life. Half of the year, it's like the inside of an oven in Moree. And it's also got the famous artesian pools. So it's the centre of Moree life. But a quarter of the people could not get into the pool because of the colour of their skin. So the Freedom Bus Ride went there, a bunch of Charlie Perkins and a bunch of university people who I met when I was up there, and made the whole of Australia realise that Australia, country towns, had actually official, real, literal apartheid in their systems, in the council laws. People weren't allowed into clubs and pubs and shops. And I was talking to women there that said little girls that were walking down the street that accidentally walked into a shop and shooed out with brooms. It's growing up in this town that made me really aware of social justice issues, and actually it still makes me upset. It paved the way for new laws. First of all, the colour bar was rescinded and people were allowed into the swimming pool. And I remember that first day too, actually. I'm not as old as I look, or is it the other way around? I'm older than I And what happened too was because Australia realised what was going on, it paved the way for a referendum that voted for Aboriginal people to be citizens for the first time in their own country. And that was due to protest and change of law. And I think this is what I talk about policies of liberation. There's policies of liberation, there's policies of destruction. Those policies of destruction meant that for generations, it doesn't just affect the people that it happens to at the time, it affects people for generation after generation, to the extent that people now may have forgotten where it started, and they don't know that the gap, the health gap or the educational gap between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people, they don't know why it's there because they don't realise where it started. So policies, bad policies, destructive policies don't just destroy people now, they destroy them for many generations to come, and they create great hardships for many generations to come. And the destructive policies that we're seeing around us now, it's not just the people now, it's the people that come after them. That's why it's so important to stand up to these destructive Liberal National Party coalition bastards. To quote from my mate back here. Okay.
That's the word you were looking for.
That was a word I was looking for. There are policies policies that protect, support and defend the most vulnerable. I was talking a minute ago about the single parent pension, but also the National Disability Insurance Scheme, introduced by Julia Gillard, another wonderful woman. Okay, the experience The experience of having a child with a disability, and I know there are people in this room that know this, it can be a profoundly huge thing. They can be impoverished, alienated, isolated from their communities, and if they had the idea that you would abandon people that in the lottery of life was given a really difficult deal, that the governments would abandon them, is just unthinkable in a civilised country. And that we've finally had a Labor government that's decided to support these people is a policy, again, that defends, supports and protects the most vulnerable, a policy of liberation. Thank you, Julia. As much as I love politics, it makes me absolutely cry with rage and anger when I see, at the moment, for example, the people that may have their hands on the wheels of power, the privileged people who've been entrusted to serve the people, instead use that power to bully and intimidate an official who is defending the human rights of children. Okay, and not children is bad enough, but poor, imprisoned, refugee children. Okay, that they would bully this woman to be quiet about defending human rights goes to show the level of destructive government that can happen. And those kids could be for generations scarred, their families affected for generations. Bad policy has to be fought tooth and nail, because it is not only cruel and destructive and inhumane, but it goes on like Agent Orange, poisoning generation after generation. And that's why we must be strong and stand up to it. We can't just stand back and say, we hate it. We have to do everything we can to fight it. Okay. And I know sorry? Now, state politics doesn't seem as quite dramatic, I know. They seem it's all trains, schools, roads, hospitals. Toilets. Tingha. I've been to Tingha. Actually, speaking of Tingha, they love us in Tingha. We went down to Tingha, the team one day, we went into a pub, and the Tingha people, Labor Party, we love the Labor Party, we got all excited because this is the first time we went out handing out leaflets. Whoa, they love the Labor Party, yay. And then we went to Barraba. They hated us in Barraba. We went in and they just basically, we don't want your shit. I can now swear because Doug did. We don't want your shit. And I said, but they loved us in Tingha. And they said, well, they would. But if you look at state politics, okay, let's take domestic violence. Domestic violence is, well, it's epidemic. A woman is being killed every week by her partner, usually for trying to leave. 2 a week. Okay, it's gone up. 2 a week. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. They're the ones getting killed. How many other people are living in the most, frightening, awful situations? And what's happened? The state government has closed down the Women's Centre. It's closed down women's housing. Funding for women's refugees are being slashed all over the place, and there's also, it's happening here, and there's also weird tendering processes happening where they're amalgamating things and things aren't just for women anymore, and so they don't know where to go, to the stage where women are leaving dangerous situations, going to the police, nowhere for them to go. They're sleeping on the floor of the police station, get up in the morning and they go back to where they came from because they have nowhere else to go. This is a government that is abandoning its citizens. Right. It's a disgrace. Okay. There's an ice epidemic in Moree, causing all kinds of problems for families, for the rest of society. Do you think there's a rehabilitation bed in Moree? Not one. Not one. In this advanced, civilised country, we can't even offer one rehabilitation bed for this ice epidemic in this small town. What is wrong with this government? What is wrong with us if we can't even do that? Okay, education is my specialty. Okay, I've been a school teacher. My school teacher friends over there. I've been a lecturer at the university. My lecturer university friends over there, and over there, and over there. And other places. And I've worked in TAFE for a little while, but They like me TAFE people anyway, they mightn't be here tonight. And I'm now working in early intervention childhood programs. Okay. Oh, with Jess, yes. Jess is there. Now, Jess, so what do? We start with TAFE. Oh, I could go on for 5 years about TAFE, but everywhere you go, TAFE has been entirely decimated. Okay? This is an institution that gives people opportunities to start in life. Traditionally, working class people, but everybody, a chance to get jobs, and not only jobs, to, for example, Moree said, for the first time in living history, there is no literacy and numeracy classes or evening classes in Moree. None. Okay? They had all sorts of wonderful programs too that involve the Aboriginal community, all gone. They don't even have an agricultural course in Moree, and it's an agricultural town. They're decimating it, they're pulling it apart because they're privatising it, selling it off to 100 little dodgy companies who are taking the government's money to give people so little and have to pay so much for. It's an absolute disgrace, and when it's gone, it won't come back. Already, most of the staff are getting their marching orders as we speak. Public school directors. Okay, the area I was working in at the university was to do with how disadvantages affect your educational opportunities, right? So we know that there are programs that have happened since Gough Whitlam's days, disadvantaged school programs, country area programs, and Robin will tell you all about this because her son was working there. Is that right, Robin? Slashed, completely slashed. Programs that are for the disadvantaged. We know that country and rural areas, they are the most disadvantaged, amongst the most disadvantaged places in New South Wales, which says a lot already about National Party people. Okay, they are the people that are bringing services here, the most disadvantaged groups. Now, what kind of people would slash education programs for disadvantaged people? This is the kind of people we're dealing with. This is why we need support to stand up against these people. They are taking services to help the most disadvantaged everywhere we look. From women to children to Aboriginal people, for people with health problems, and I won't even start on health because that's a whole other area that's disgusting. If you don't have a good health system, what have you got? So, yes. Which brings me to themes I do want to emphasise here because they help us understand what we're fighting for and what we believe in. Okay, the first one is privatisation of public institutions and assets. This is the main agenda of this state government. It's in their DNA that the Liberal Party and their mates in the National Party decide to take away government services, okay, and offer them up to companies who will profit from people's basic needs as well as their needs for education and health. It says a lot about them. Privatisation is absolutely the death knell of so many services. It takes them out of the hands of people and they just can't afford them anymore. Now this has, I have to say too, oh, there's our electricity guy over here, poles and wires, okay. We have also been fighting against the privatisation of electricity. In this, Adam Marshall says, oh, it's not here, he saved it here, he saved it here. Yeah, well, his big boss has actually said, no, we'll wait till after the election, then they'll come and grab it from here too. As if they're going to leave one little isolated government service in a bunch of electric distribution. You should have talked about this. As if that's going to happen. No, people will be paying, and it's in South Australia and Victoria, Queensland, everywhere they've privatised it, it becomes much more expensive. Again, who cares about the poor people? The other thing is, this privatisation has been part, since the 80s, of a grander neoliberal agenda, embraced by both sides of politics, I have to say. A religion that elevated the free market above basic human decency, okay? Above community support, above protection, and above defence of the ordinary human being. The market ran free, okay? Now, it created a brutal program of callous abandonment of citizens to the vagaries of the marketplace and made them victims of greed to the profit people who want to profit out of their basic needs. The ugly, ugly end of this is where the CEO of Nestle said, water is not even a human right. Okay, that's the ugly end of privatisation. That's the ugly end of the neoliberal agenda. Privatisation for a long time was considered common sense. Now it's being questioned and rejected by even Nobel Prize-winning economists. And I'm happy and relieved and proud to see the Labor Party is finally, I have to say finally, because they did walk along this track too, but they're taking up a fight, and as long as they're fighting privatisation, I'll be very, very proud to be in the Labor Party. Privatisation touches so much of our lives. My sister, who couldn't come here tonight because she's a nurse and doing nursey things, she also door knocked and got rid of Campbell, so go Colleen. Yeah, big clap for Colleen. Yeah, go Colleen. Okay. She's taught me a lot about what's happened in privatisation because she's worked in public hospitals and private hospitals. Now, I don't know the Queensland thing all that well, but they were fighting very much to keep a patient 1-to-4 ratio of patients to nurses, right? And so that was happening in the public sector, even though Campbell was fighting against this and they were fighting him against this. But in the private hospital, they were 10-to-1. 10-to-1. Now you can imagine this, nursing homes, all these other private places, 10-to-1. My sister, who's a very devoted nurse and a very caring person and a Labor Party person, she said that she couldn't stand being a nurse anymore because what she's doing as a nurse now, all she's doing is helping private companies profit because she cannot look after patients. This is how stories of old ladies sitting in chairs for days happen. This has an enormous impact on people. This is a life or death situation. Ratios, patient to nurse ratios. It isn't just, and I know that a lot of the private hospitals don't even want to talk about it. So health has become a secondary to profit. In health, life or death, unforgivable. And we must fight this too. It's happening here as well. It's happening here everywhere. Okay, the nurses' union here is fighting for nurse-to-patient ratios. Okay, the other thing the nurses' union is doing is fighting against the privatisation of home care for the aged and disabled. Now, this is a really important, what's the word? One of those words. So I want you to get on board, go online and look at it, sign their petitions, whatever. Fancy throwing under the bus the aged and the disabled and throwing them into companies for pure profit. I mean, could you think of anything more evil than that? It's something we have to fight. These guys have got no conscience whatsoever. Okay, yes. And while I've touched on it now, the second theme is unions, all right? My brother-in-law over here, who's come in very handy tonight. In fact, my brother-in-law has been fantastic this week. I have to give him... I don't know what... He even cleaned my bathroom this morning. I mean, he made me a sandwich. I wouldn't be here without my brother-in-law. Unions, yes. He's in the what are you in? The TWU, the Transport Workers Union, who are also fighting, and they're fighting here too, and I'm going to publicly support these guys because what they're fighting for is really important. They're fighting against the pressures that force truck drivers to take drugs to stay awake so they can stick to the most inhuman and gruelling timetables for the profit of companies. And it's putting companies before people's lives because people can die on the road and they can run into other people, and you know the horror of truck accidents. So I'm really, really supporting the TWU tonight too. They don't know it yet, but he does. And again, we brought up unions, and I'm going to talk a bit more about unions. We have to fight against the demonisation of the most democratic institution fighting to protect, to support and defend our working conditions. In the case of nurses, it's patients' lives. In the case of truck drivers, it's other drivers' lives. And let me repeat until I can say it until I'm blue in the face, and I want you to all say it to everybody. There is no such thing as a union boss. okay? There is no such thing as a union boss. They are democratic representatives of the people. Stop putting this archaic capitalist imprint on to democratic institutions, okay? And God bless the unions, yeah. Why am I standing? I believe in policies that protect, defend and support all people, particularly the vulnerable. Now, all my protesty friends are here. Put up your hands, all my protesty friends. And I'm sure it's not without some pain that they come to a Labor Party do, and I really, really appreciate that, because we do a lot of protesty things together. And why am I standing? Well, I've stood on many picket lines, and I've held many banners, and I've yelled angrily into many megaphones until I'm hoarse. And bugger it, I'm going to give this a try. Why not? Okay? I think this world is far from fair. New South Wales is going backwards. We have to do something about it. Good people, and that includes all of you, people who care about our communities, people who care about education, health, fairness, the environment, people who care about coal seam gas companies tearing up the countryside, okay? Your voices should be included, so that policies of liberation and creation win the battle against policies of destruction. We need more people like you. I know you'll never join the Labor Party, but think about it, okay? And the architects of the policies of destruction should so overwhelmingly rule the Northern Tablelands is a situation that must be challenged. The ideology of conservative rule cannot win. They must not win for all our sakes. Okay. Thank you. What we want to do is, well, what I want to do, and I hope we want to do it, is we want to start a groundswell of progressive voices in the Northern Tablelands, united against the inhumane and destructive policies of the Liberal National Party Conservatives. And I mean, yes, protest, but not just protest, because I want you to be part of creating the policies that defend, protect and support people. Jump on board, I urge you. Thank you.